A philosopher dies. An angel comes down to him and says, "We're not sure what to do with you, philosopher." The philosopher looks at him questioningly. The angel continues, "You have not done anyone any harm, as you spend your life sitting around thinking and engaging in rhetoric that attempted to encourage people to seek meaning in their life and be good to one another. But you have not done humanity any good either, as you did not present any solution as to how to do this. And besides, people already had enough problems before you came along with your persistent questions. You belong both in heaven and in hell for deeds on earth." The philosopher replies, "As I have spent the entirety of my life contemplating the meaning of life, let me help you and be the judge of whether I go to heaven or hell. Let me visit each and determine where I fit best." As the committee in the heavens was unable to reach any decision about the philosopher's post-mortal destination for quite some time now, the angel eagerly agreed to the proposition, and the pair went off on their tour. They took the stairs down and, after a long descent, arrived at the grounds of a formidable palace. Pruned hedges, manicured lawn, glowing limestone. "This is hell," announced the angel. "Not too shabby," thought the philosopher. Upon entering the palace, the philosopher was met by a beautiful group of guests, dressed in fine-tailored satin tunics, silk dresses, perfectly pressed tuxedos, and other immaculate formal attire. The philosopher stood in the entrance to the palace, struck by the splendor. The guests instantly welcomed him and engaged the philosopher in musings on literature, art, existential conversations, and other highbrow discussions. The philosopher was delighted. At last, a sea of people with whom he can engross himself in endless discussions. He felt at home here. The angel smiled. Then dinner was served and guests were called to the table laden with delights and delicacies served in porcelain, gold, and silverware. The philosopher, in all his life, had never seen such a sumptuous feast. He was very hungry. Picking up his golden cutlery, to his bewilderment, he saw that it was incredibly long, over 1 meter in length. He looked around to look for an example of how to use these elongated utensils and saw that all his glamorous companions also had absolutely no idea. They managed to skewer the food on with their forks or scoop it up with a spoon, but due to the length of the handle, could not get it into their mouth. In trying to eat, they were accidentally poking each other with the forks, spilling food off their spoons, headbutting, and elbowing each other. Soon, everything was covered in food and blood. The satin tablecloth was browned, littered with chunks and lumps. The guest dresses and suits were torn, smeared, soggy. The floor looked like a battle scene. The philosopher was disappointed, saddened, disgusted. He began to lose faith. At this moment, the angel returned, approached him and asked, "Would you like to see heaven now?" "Yes," solemnly replied the philosopher. They took the elevator up in silence. Exiting the elevator, the philosopher was once again presented with a view of a garden and palace in splendor. This time, he did not gasp with delight and walked to the entrance without much determination. Seeing a cohort of picture-perfect and pristinely dressed guests once again disquieted the philosopher. Had they made a mistake? Had they not left hell? The angel noticed the philosopher's hesitation and assured him that no mistake had been made, and that this truly was heaven. Once more, he was approached by guests who swept him away into a vortex of debate and conversation on his favorite topics. For a moment, the philosopher relaxed, felt at ease. almost at home, indulging in intense inquiries into human existence. The bell rang. The guests were called. Dinner was served. Everyone gathered to the table. A feast was presented, an exquisite feast with products and dishes from all over the world. The philosopher by now was critically hungry, as he had not managed to eat in hell. But in reaching for his cutlery, he was engulfed by fear, for he saw once more the elongated golden cutlery. He froze, a million thoughts racing through his mind. Despair. Instantly engulfed in an existential crisis, he began to sob. His entire life he had spent contemplating the meaning of life, and all in vain. It was all a joke. There was no meaning, no need to do good or bad. It was all the same, and heaven and hell were the same. Suddenly he heard the words, "Aren't you hungry?" His existential crisis interrupted by the guest sitting opposite him. The philosopher looked up and saw that the guest was smiling, sat in still pristine dress, reaching towards him with a spoonful of mutton stew. The philosopher looked around. The entire table, hundreds of people, or as far as the eye could see, people were feeding one another. They knew that the cutlery was far too long for them to feed themselves, but perfectly designed to feed each other. They were all working together. It was at this point that the philosopher realized that any place can be heaven or hell. It all depends on the people and what they make of it. He picked up his spoon and asked the person sitting opposite, "What would you like?" The angel left.